Hey Sonic the Fighters freaks! Thanks to the work of the game's modding community, STF's cut character, Mechless Eggman, aka Eggman, is now playable online via the game's community mod. And honestly, he might be the coolest new fighting game character of the year, with a raw animal magnetism that is hard for any gamer to resist. But is he good? Well, many of the game's best players will tell you no. Mechless Eggman is kind of an incomplete character. He has a small moveset, with many of his moves being universal attacks that are already on several other characters. And there's little he can do that another character can't do better. One of his only unique attacks is his bomb throw, a projectile move so slow that it's basically useless. Then there's the fact that in STF, crouches are one of the best defensive options due to their ability to dodge highs and grabs, and Eggman can't crouch at all. He also happens to have the slowest walk speed in the game. So why play him? Well, to quote Coney,
he does a lot of damage.
Surprisingly, this character shares an archetype with Knuckles, Tails, Honey, and a couple of cut characters in that he has access to the string known as Sidestep, Punch, Kick. A simple two-piece that does a lot of damage, can be initiated on frame 9 after a sidestep, sets up a tech situation on hit, and is pretty much safe on block. Unfortunately, the Eggman punch kick is not like the others. Mechless Eggman is a stubby character, even by STF standards, with a huge torso that makes many interactions weird for him. A lot of the time, if you use his punch kick, the kick will simply fail to connect. Punch kick is typically safe on block, but it's not safe on whiff, so this is problematic to say the least. There are some positions where the K of PK is more likely to hit, but ideally players should probably use his sidestep double punch and triple punch strings. When you use this string, the second punch will cause an unusually high amount of hit stun, which makes the slow startup animation for the third windup punch far less of a liability than you would think. Sidestep out of this string is possible, but very hard to do consistently. If you get hit by the first two punches of this string, the only way to consistently get out of getting hit by the third punch is by blocking. And here's the thing, the third punch is largely safe on block. And if it does connect, it can do massive amounts of damage. The high damage output of this wind-up punch can be increased if you hit your opponent while they're in the startup frames of an attack, granting you additional counter hit damage. This wind-up punch also launches opponents, creating a situation where if you read your opponent's tech correctly, you might be able to close out the round right there with air kicks.
Oh my god.
These punches do not break barriers, mind you, but in STF, breaking barriers is not as valuable a trait as you might think, especially because blocking loses handily to throws, and Eggman's single throw happens to be a really good one. With a massive range, that means if he can hit you, he can probably grab you. This grab also causes a hard knockdown, which in turn puts you in an advantageous position to go for an OTG stomp, or to activate hyper mode and try to set up a combo. When it comes to hyper mode, Eggman is far from the best character, but he does have some interesting ways to utilize it. The Eggman in STF do not have grounded hyper start animations, so if you want to activate hyper mode, you'll have to use air hyper instead of the grounded version of hyper start. This can be used well as a way to come down from a tech, as it will give you an active hitbox to contest attempts to juggle you. It also will, of course, activate hyper mode, allowing you to create custom combos. Eggman's meager moveset means that he doesn't have as creative of options as other characters while in hyper mode, at least thus far in the metagame, but there are some options that he has while hyper that are pretty interesting. Matt Beach has pioneered the Hyper 3K combo, where by using barrier inputs to cancel the launching hit of Eggman's kick string, you can combo opponents with step kicks into a grab as a finisher. There's another hyper mode sequence I enjoy with the character, although it's not actually a true combo. You activate hyper mode, land a throw, and then stomp dive and punch kick. Players who know how to accelerate their get-ups can roll out of this stomp, but if they don't, the sequence is really fun to pull off. So yeah, that's some of what Eggman does best, but why is he then considered to be possibly one of the worst characters in the game? In part, it's because he shares a weakness with Tails. Tails' small size, wider move list, and access to crouch and spin allow him to be a pretty strong character, but he is very vulnerable to camping. Unlike Honey and Knuckles, he can't easily close space, so if he doesn't have a lead, he can be vulnerable to timeouts from opponents playing a hit-and-run game. Eggman has this issue as well. While his dashing and sidestepping movement is adequate, he lacks an easy way to get in unless his opponent is already in forward sidestep range. He is also a larger target than Tails. His sidestep punch and grab both make him deadly in the scrap, but in many cases the scrap is something his opponent can opt out of engaging in. With zoning tools like Sonic's sidestep punch, Bean's bombs, Fang's corks, and the Swiss Army knife that is Knuckles' forward sidestep. And as stated earlier, Eggman's bombs are simply too slow to meaningfully contest his opponents from far away. His grab is good, but while most opponents can duck under his, he cannot duck under theirs, making him an easy target for throws in this game as well, and in Sonic the Fighters, many characters' throws are their best moves. This is why Bean might be Eggman's worst matchup, as Bean, through his bombs, forces Eggman to either jump unsafely or face a barrage of pecks and high damage throws on the ground. So far, Eggman has not been able to win any STF tournaments, at least as far as I know, while characters like Amy and Bark have. That said, I think it's definitely possible. At the end of many of the tournaments I've hosted, I've enjoyed challenging the winner to a fight versus my Eggman, and well, he's done alright for himself. This character's high damage output means that he can be scary to fight even if on paper he still has a lot of issues. And between his punches and his long-range grab, he may be illustrative of just how few tools a character needs in this game to, if not thrive, at least hang. Seriously though, if there's one thing you take from this video, it's try punching your opponent once or twice with this character and then grabbing them instead of finishing the punch string. Just mix them up. Now, if you do want to play as this character, there is one more thing that might be confusing if you're used to the rest of the cast. Out of a standstill, Eggman has access to two kicks, the skip kick and the step kick. These are both moves that a lot of the game's characters have, with step kick usually being input by pressing the kick button on its own, and skip kick by pressing up and kick 3 times, kicking out of a sidestep, or kicking with your back turned to your opponent. But for Eggman, for whatever reason, skip kick is input by just pressing kick on its own, while step kick is performed by holding down and forward while kicking. This is confusing, but it is what it is. So if you do want to play as this character, you'll want to get yourself Sonic the Fighters Community Edition 1.6, the latest version of the community's competitive modification of the game's 2012 HD port. In time, the community does hope to host this mod on a publicly accessible page, but for now, you can get it in the community Discord, which will be linked in the video description. This same community team is currently working on a wacky Halloween mod that we hope to get out within the coming week. I plan to host a tournament in that mod on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/WussTunes, once it's out. So stay tuned. Just kind of a shorter video for today. I was working on another Melee video, but there's something about Sonic the Fighters that just keeps pulling me back. Thank you to my Ko-fi supporters and YouTube channel members, and happy legging!